Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning on in at the live stream here, a reaction video to Mr. Ballen's most recent video. I have no idea what's going on in the video, and I haven't watched it. I always wait because I want to see if I can figure it out before we get to the end. So all I know is it's dealing with a babysitter, and I also want to get right on into it. All right. Thank y'all too again for being here. Alicia and Lisa and Malika Stone is in the building, as well as Jackson. And Tata's here. How's it going, Tata? Thanks for being here. And Mr. This is, and Naeem is here, and Just Jay as well. Thank you for being here. All right, let me pull it up. Let's get on into it. Here we go.
In 1999, a father arrived at a train station to pick up his teenage daughter from school. But when the train she was supposed to be on arrived at the station, she didn't get off. And so the father just sat in the parking lot, assuming his daughter must be late and she'll be on the next train. But as more and more trains came into the station, none of them were carrying his daughter. And so eventually, this father just left the parking lot and headed back home, believing his daughter must have found another way home. Unfortunately, though, that was not the case. It would turn out his daughter had made a fateful decision that day that would soon turn her and her family's lives into a nightmare. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do. And the family lived in 1998.
Rachel Starr.
In 1998, the Barber family was living a charmed life. Michael and Elizabeth had been happily married for 20 years, and they had 3 beautiful daughters who ranged in age from 9 to 15, and they were all thriving. The family lived in a very modest, plain-looking home in Melbourne, Australia, but the second you stepped foot inside of that home, you would see it was bursting with life. The sounds of kids laughing and playing, and of Michael and Elizabeth happily chatting away, filled every room. Now, the Barbers' lives were not perfect by any means. In fact, they struggled financially and lived basically paycheck to paycheck. However, they didn't let their financial struggles define them. Instead, Michael and Elizabeth put a lot of stock in another aspect of their lives that they were all undeniably rich in, and that was in creativity. Michael was a toy maker and a designer, and Elizabeth worked in children's literature. And each of the 3 Barber children were beginning to cultivate their own unique creative gifts. At 9 years old, Heather, who was the youngest, had developed a lovely singing voice. Ashley Rose, who was the middle child at 11 years old, had learned to play the flute. But the Barber's oldest daughter, 15-year-old Rachel, was really the star of the family. In fact, they called her that, Rachel Star. Rachel was an extremely talented dancer. She was so graceful and stylish that even when she was just walking around, it almost looked like she was dancing. Rachel was also very beautiful, with big emerald green eyes and fair skin, and she had this effortless charisma that just drew people to her. From the outside, Rachel really did look like the kid who had everything going for her.
Yeah, I don't like this one already, how he set this up. So 3 daughters, aged 4, 9, and 15. Ashley plays the flute. Heather is a singer. Rachel, they call her Rachel Starr. She was a dancer. And he said that she's pretty. And I noticed he said something like, people are drawn to her. I don't like that. Okay, and she's probably the one that the parents, Michael and Elizabeth, were waiting for on the train, and she never showed up. That's what I think. Okay. All right, and if any of y'all, if you've already seen this, please don't spoil it. We're going to see if we can figure it out. How's it going, Tech Biz? Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And as well as God's Little Princess, and Vince is in the building. One of the OGs. Chandra's in the building. Is in the building. The big boss man is here. All right. How's it going, Jay? Thanks for tuning on in. I'll be live streaming tomorrow too. It's my birthday. I'll get on here. It'll probably be a little bit later because I'm gonna take my family out to eat, and we'll get on here and I'll have some ice cream or something. And we'll just hang out for a little while. Yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. I'm getting the vibe the family is pushing their kids into showbiz. That could have something to do with it. Let's see what happens. Okay, I think it's a little too early to kind of tell, but I have a sense that she was the one who was supposed to be on the train. But I could be wrong. Okay, she might be the babysitter. Okay, because that's the other thing. She's 15. I doubt that she would have a babysitter. Maybe she was the babysitter, and she was taking care of a child. Something ends up happening, and the child was supposed to get onto the train. and the child wasn't on the train. Maybe Rachel did something. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, here we go.
But, like the rest of us, Rachel had her own struggles. Like she was not a natural student. No matter how hard she tried, math and science just seemed impossible to her. And
That's okay.
Rachel had a number of acute fears that really made certain aspects of her life very challenging. She was deathly afraid of the dark. She was afraid of talking to strangers. She was afraid of navigating the public transportation system on her own.
no.
And even just the thought of going into a store by herself filled her with immense dread. As a result of having these fears, Rachel was actually very dependent on her parents. Her mother, Elizabeth, would jokingly say that Rachel was 15, going on 18, going on 12. Eventually, when Rachel's anxieties and fears, combined with her struggles with traditional schoolwork, put her into a bit of a depression, her parents decided they needed to step in and take action. They wanted their Rachel star to be happy. They wanted to encourage her and nurture her strengths. And the
Good.
thing that they knew she loved the most and was the best at was dance. So in September of 1998, Michael and Elizabeth allowed Rachel to drop out of her traditional school and transfer to a full-time dance school in Richmond, which was an inner-city suburb of Melbourne, located about 20 minutes away from the Barber's house. And once Rachel was enrolled in this new dance school, she blossomed. She made loads of new friends, she started modeling, which was something she was very proud of, and she met a boy, Manny, who she absolutely adored. But as well as things seemed to be going for Rachel at her new school, she would soon make a fateful decision that would have absolutely catastrophic effects. On Monday, March 1st of 1999, so 5 months after Rachel had transferred to this new dance school, Rachel and her father, Michael, like every other morning, left the Barber household, climbed into Michael's car, and began driving to Wattle Park, which was a train station closest to their house. From Wattle Park, Rachel would catch a train that would take her to the Richmond station, and then she would get off, she would meet up with a friend, they would have breakfast, and they would walk the rest of the way to their dance school. When Michael pulled into the parking lot at Wattle Park and parked the car, and Rachel was getting her stuff to climb out of the vehicle to head up to the train, he stopped his daughter and said, "Hey, remember, I'll be back here at 6:15 tonight to pick you up." And Rachel looked at him, she smiled and said, "Okay," and then she hopped out of the car and she pranced her way over to the station.
Yeah, she
Michael
didn't keep
watched
that
his daughter
schedule.
just long enough to see her climb the steps and disappear, at which point he put his car back in drive, he left the lot, and he headed back home. Then Michael returned to Wattle Park. But at 6:15 p.m., when the train came rolling into the station, Rachel was not on board. Michael assumed his daughter must have been running late and so missed the train she would always take, and so he just sat in the parking lot and waited for the next train to come into the station. And a few minutes later, when it pulled into the station, Rachel was not on that train either. And so Michael, he was starting to get worried because he's looking outside, it's getting dark, he knows his daughter hates being out in the dark, she's afraid of being alone, and he's wondering, what's going on with her, but he keeps telling himself that she's bound to show up any minute. And so Michael just sat in this parking lot and watched train after train after train come through the station. And
Yeah, by the way, this is in 1999, so cell phones, yeah, this is already turned into a tough one. Why did he call? Is this maybe this is a 3-episode one that he does, because it says the worst babysitter ever, but I haven't heard anything about a babysitter. I haven't heard anything about a babysitter. Well, let's see what happens.
Rachel wasn't on any of them. Now, Michael didn't have a cell phone, and neither did Rachel, so he couldn't just call her to see where she was. But finally, after a few more trains came through and none of them contained his daughter, he left the parking lot but went to his parents' house, which was much closer than his own home, and he rushed inside and he grabbed their phone and he called back to his home. And when his wife, Elizabeth, Rachel's mom, picked up the phone, he immediately asked her, "Hey, is Rachel home? Did she get a ride home from one of her friends?" And Elizabeth would tell Michael, "No, she's not here, and she hasn't called." This was the moment when Michael and Elizabeth instinctively knew something had to be wrong. Rachel was on time for everything, and if she was late, she would always call ahead or call afterwards and at least give some explanation. But to just go silent and not show up, that was not in character. And again, because it was pitch black outside and they knew she was probably alone, that was a situation they knew Rachel would never want to be in because it would have terrified her. And so Michael tells Elizabeth he's going to come home as fast as he can. They hang up. And then while Elizabeth is waiting for her husband to return, she picked the phone right back up and she dialed Manny's number. That's Rachel's boyfriend. She figured maybe Rachel was with Manny, or at the very least, maybe she checked in with Manny, because most nights Rachel and Manny spoke on the phone. But when Manny picked up the phone, he would tell Elizabeth that he hasn't seen Rachel since earlier in the day, and she has not called him, which to him was odd. When Elizabeth asked Manny, what was my daughter doing when you were with her last? Manny would say, oh, we went out to a shopping mall near the school in Richmond, and we went to the shoe store, and Rachel actually walked up to a very particular set of shoes. They were these big platform blue chunky shoes, and she said that she was going to buy them the next day, and she was really excited about it. And Elizabeth, as she's hearing this, she knew exactly the shoes that Manny was describing, because just the day before, Rachel had taken her mom, Elizabeth, to the shoe store and pleaded with her to get those blue chunky platform shoes. But when Elizabeth had looked at the price tag, they were $100, and so they were too expensive. And so as Elizabeth is hearing Manny say that her daughter is talking about how she's going to buy these shoes the next day, Elizabeth is thinking, with what money? Rachel has no money. How could she possibly afford those shoes? And so she asked Manny, did Rachel say how she planned on affording those blue shoes? And Manny would say, actually, yeah. She told me that she had this secret job, but she wouldn't give me any more details about it. And
you see how my face already turned at that point when she said how she gonna get them shoes, and she's a dancer, and they said she's cute. Damn. I knew it was going there. Oh man, she's 15. I mean, I'm not going. I'll drive her to the things. You do your dance, then I'll wait. Then you get back in the car, and we're gonna be.
She said that with the money from this secret job, she'd be able to buy these shoes. Manny would tell Elizabeth that Rachel really stressed that this secret job was nothing to worry about. It was nothing immoral. But as Elizabeth is listening to Manny tell her this, all her alarm bells are going off. She could not fathom any job that would require a 15-year-old girl to go out by herself at night doing something that was secret and give absolutely.
Okay, maybe it's not as bad as I think. Maybe it was. That's what I went to because of how he's telling the story. Hopefully it's not that or something like that.
No information to her family. Every possibility just seemed bad. After hanging up the phone with Manny, Elizabeth began frantically calling all of Rachel's friends and acquaintances and different locations around town that she knew her daughter would frequent, but nobody had any information about where Rachel was. A little while later, Michael finally pulled into the driveway.
Maybe she was babysitting. That's what it is. It's got to be. Please don't say it's the other thing. It's babysitting, and something ends up happening. Something happens.
And when he went inside, he talked to his wife briefly, but he could tell they had no new information. Their daughter was still not home. This was becoming a crisis. And so very quickly, Michael just left the house, got right back into his car, and he drove to the police station. But when he got to the police station, the police didn't really offer the response that he was hoping for. From the police's perspective, it sounded like a teenage girl has been missing for a few hours. And so in their mind, they're thinking, one, that's not an emergency yet.
Yeah, they tend to approach it that way.
And two, she probably just kind of ran off. Teenagers do that. They come back the next day. It's normal. And so
yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Despite Michael's pleas to the police that no, this is different, my daughter would never do that. She would never run away. This is totally out of character. Despite all those pleas, the police said, look, Michael, just go home, wait, your daughter will be home soon. And if for some reason in the next few days she does not come back home, you come back and you tell us.
The next few days.
And so Michael, now feeling totally devastated and terrified for his daughter's safety, finally did just leave the police station and he headed back home. And then he and his wife and his two other daughters had a terrible, restless night's sleep.
Yeah, that's horrible. That is so horrible. I'm telling you, that's just it's horrible. I would have, well, I'm not going to say because I ain't going to put myself in this scenario, but I think he should have went and got the boyfriend and got in the car and then just drove wherever the area is where she's going to, because it would have to be around where the school is at. Get up over in that area, and just keep asking him questions, see if he can come up with anything. Anything. Did she say that she's going to a store around here at some point? Anything you can find just to kind of triangulate a general area. That's what I would have done. Let me not even say it out because I ain't.
Wondering what was going on with Rachel. And then finally, when the sun came up the next morning, Michael and Elizabeth rushed out of their bedroom and headed into the kitchen, hoping, praying that Rachel would just magically be in their house again. But when they went into the kitchen, Rachel wasn't there. She had not come
terrible.
home. However, pretty early on this second day of Rachel's disappearance, Michael and Elizabeth would learn something new. Manny would get in touch with Michael and Elizabeth, and he would tell them that he remembered something Rachel had said during their final conversation the day before.
Okay.
She had told Manny that he had nothing to worry about with regards to this secret job because it wasn't immoral, it was totally safe.
Babysitting.
And Manny said, Rachel said there was an old female friend who was going to be there at this job site in some way participating that would keep her safe. And so Michael and Elizabeth have no idea what to make of this old female friend, but in a way it was kind of a relief because they know their daughter is basically terrified to be alone. And so at least knowing wherever she was with this old friend, that made them feel
It might be the boyfriend making all this up anyway. Well, I have no idea.
good. But the parents' positivity about this new development quickly faded when they began calling around to all of Rachel's friends, both new and old, female and otherwise, and none of them were missing. Everybody was where they were supposed to be, and nobody knew anything about what happened to Rachel. The only intel the parents got from this round of calling all of her friends was that several of her friends said that the day before, the day Rachel disappeared, they had walked with Rachel back to the train station after school. And in fact, one of the friends told Michael and Elizabeth that they offered Rachel a ride home so that she wouldn't have to ride the train back home, but Rachel had turned it down, saying her father was going to be meeting her on the other end at Wattle Park at 6:15 p.m. The Barbers didn't know what to make of this. Did Rachel believe at the time that she could go do this secret job and still be back in time to meet her father at 6?
Yeah, that's the thing. I was thinking about that earlier. It doesn't make sense. If she's on this schedule, how is she going to find enough time in between when she's done at the school to make that schedule? How is she going to find time to go do a job? And how long is the job? What are you going to do a job for an hour? That's why the babysitting part don't even make sense. I don't get it. I don't see why anyway.
15 at Wattle Park? Or did she lie to the friend who was offering the ride and make up the story that she planned on seeing her father when in reality she planned on ditching her father and going and doing this secret job for the night? But regardless of which of these things were true, the parents just still could not understand why by now, 24 hours later, their daughter still had not called to check in. Michael and Elizabeth found themselves wondering if they really knew their Rachel Star as well as they thought they did.
Listen, people, the thing is that she says a secret job, and there's a couple lessons already. Maybe I shouldn't tell them. I like to give a lesson every time, but maybe I should save this for later. I'll save it for later. Let me let this go.
You know, maybe she had actually run away like the police suggested. The parents were totally distraught, they were totally anxious and terrified, and so with nothing else to do, over the next several days, they just continued to go out and look everywhere and talk to everyone to try to find where their daughter was. But everything they looked into turned into a dead end. Then, finally, on Monday, March 8th, so exactly 1 week since Rachel had disappeared, Michael and Elizabeth got a new lead. A girl named Allison, who had gone to a dance class with Rachel before Rachel had transferred schools, had overheard her younger sister talking about the Rachel Barber disappearance and how nobody had seen or heard from Rachel since 5:45 p.m. the previous Monday. Allison, who had not heard about Rachel's disappearance until this very moment, knew immediately she had to go forward and talk to police because she actually saw Rachel on the night she disappeared, a full hour after her last known sighting. At 6:40 p.m. on the night Rachel disappeared, Allison was on the train car headed to Praron, which is a suburb located southeast of where Rachel lived. And when this train that Allison was on pulled into the Richmond station and the doors opened up, Allison watched as Rachel, along with this other girl who Allison didn't recognize, walked on board and then took seats right next to each other on the other end of the train away from Allison. Now, from Allison's perspective, immediately it was clear they were friends. They were laughing and joking together and just kind of in their own world. And so Allison didn't want to be rude, so she stopped staring at them, and they continued riding the train until they got to the Praron station, at which point Allison got up to leave the train. But as she did, she saw Rachel and this mystery girl. They also had stood up, and they were making their way out of the door. And as they were leaving, Rachel actually would look up and see Allison, and they would both smile and wave at each other. But that was it. And then Allison would watch as Rachel and her friend would leave ahead of her, and they would walk down the platform. And from Allison's perspective, it seemed obvious that Rachel and this girl were friends, and whatever they were going to go do, they were choosing to go do, and they were going to do together. When Michael and Elizabeth heard about this sighting of their daughter on the train and this mystery girl, on the one hand, it was kind of reassuring because it meant that Rachel was with this friend, potentially the old female friend that Rachel mentioned to Manny, and so whatever she was doing, at least she was not alone. But on the other hand, it begged the question of what role did this mystery person play in wherever Rachel was now? Had Rachel and this mystery girl gone to do this secret job together and then something happened to them? Or had this mystery girl been Rachel's accomplice, and they had run off together like the police thought? Whatever the case was, the Barbers and the police at this point, who were looking much more seriously into the Barber case by now, they knew the next step was identifying this mystery girl. A couple of days later, on Thursday, March 11th, the police called in an artist to create a sketch of this mystery girl that Allison had seen on the train. Allison would describe this mystery girl as being older than Rachel, being heavier than Rachel, and very plain. That day, the police also ordered a trace on all of the phone calls going into the Barber residence on the day before she went missing, because they figured that if Rachel and this mystery girl were in cahoots on some sort of secret thing together, they likely communicated the day before.
Yeah, but they could have communicated at the school or near the school. Maybe that's where this older woman or person saw her. There's no telling. But notice how they're not. He doesn't say anything about cell phones. So this is 1999 in Melbourne, Australia. It's probable that cell phones weren't common. I mean, they weren't even really all that common. Well, when I was in around that time, I don't think I had my first cell phone until what 2000, 2001, something like that. Okay.
And when the phone call trace came back, there was one phone number in particular that stood out to police. There was a private phone number that called the Barber household twice on the day before Rachel disappeared. Once at 5:24 p.m., and that call lasted about 15 minutes. And then shortly after that call ended, the private number called back, and then there was another conversation that lasted about 30 minutes. It would take police another 24 hours, but eventually they would figure out who this private caller was. It was a 20-year-old woman named Caroline Robertson, who very closely resembled the police sketch of the mystery girl that Allison had seen on the train. And it just so happened that Caroline Robertson lived very close to the Praron train station where Allison saw the mystery girl and Rachel get off. Additionally, Caroline was Rachel's old babysitter and was very close with the Barber family.
What? Caroline was the Now I see. Now we get to the babysitter part. Oh my goodness. This Caroline, man. Well, this is crazy. Yeah, that's what they're saying. It's the old babysitter, but she's 20. Rachel was 15. Her sister Ashley was 4, and her sister Heather was 9. Oh man, I tell you.
Caroline Robertson lived very close to the Praron train station where Allison saw the mystery girl and Rachel get off. Additionally, Caroline was Rachel's old babysitter and was very close with the Barber family. And so it seemed very likely that Caroline was both the mystery girl on the train and the old female friend that Rachel had mentioned to Manny when she told him about this secret job. This new information was a huge relief. From Michael and Elizabeth's perspective and the police's perspective, it now seemed very likely that Rachel and Caroline had just snuck off together and were now probably hiding out at Caroline's apartment.
Yeah, but why? But the thing is that she's 5 years older. She's 20. Rachel's 15. The thing, how Mr. Ballen sets this up when he talks about how Rachel, she's talented and she's pretty and people are drawn to her. What I thought early on was that something happened with one of these other girls, because he's told stories like this and it dealt with jealousy. That's what I thought. So now that it's clear that she's interacting with old babysitter Carolyn Robinson, that's what I'm kind of leaning towards right now. She was jealous for her jealous of her for a long time and set something crazy up, talking about it as a job or whatever. Well, I tell you, we'll see.
Near the Praran train station. And so, believing they could put an end to this missing teenager drama that night, the police hopped in their cars and they drove over to Caroline's apartment. But when they got there at 5:25 p.m., they very quickly realized that things were not as they seemed. Police walked up to Caroline's front door and they knocked and began yelling out for Caroline and Rachel to come outside, but nobody yelled back and nobody opened the door. When they tried the handle, they found it was locked, so they got in touch with the property's real estate agent.
See, listen, who knows? They both could have gotten into some bad trouble. Probably some secret job, and Carolyn, she's 20, got her turned down on something, and then she's out there doing stuff, and Caroline probably doing stuff too, and then both of them get caught up in some foolishness.
Who came out and gave them a set of spare keys, and when the police tried those keys, they found they still could not open the door because the door had been locked from the inside with a special latch. And so the police began walking around the perimeter of the building looking for another way inside. And as they're walking, one of the officers looks up and sees a second floor window of the apartment is open. And it's open enough that clearly a person could slip inside. And so the police contacted the fire department, who showed up very quickly, and they put a ladder up against the side of the apartment that went up to that open window, and then a police officer began climbing up. And when he got up to the window and could look inside...
See, listen, real quick, it has to be Caroline, because that's why he wouldn't have named it the worst babysitter ever. Caroline did something. She's the problem.
He saw he was looking into a bedroom, and at first it looked totally ordinary until he noticed there was a body lying face down at the foot of the bed on the ground. It was Caroline. The officer on the ladder immediately turned around and yelled for backup, and then he and other officers poured into the apartment, and before long, Caroline, who did actually still have a pulse, but she was totally unconscious and not responding, she was being rushed to the hospital. And while that was happening, the remainder of the officers who were on site, they all went into the apartment to try to find Rachel. And so as they're searching this apartment, which was totally messy, there was things everywhere, there were boxes everywhere, it almost looked like Carolyn had been packing her apartment to move, potentially, when something happened to her, causing her to fall unconscious inside of her bedroom. And so the police searched this apartment top to bottom, and they did not find Rachel. In fact, there was no trace of Rachel anywhere, except they did find a bag of clothes that looked like they were Rachel's size, not Caroline's size, but it wasn't clear if those were actually Rachel's clothes. And so the police just kind of walked around the apartment, gathering up anything that seemed suspicious, like they found rubber gloves and hair dye, they found some bank receipts and some notebooks with some strange writing in them, and they just hoped that some of this stuff might lead to Rachel. Back at the hospital, Caroline had regained consciousness.
What was a secret job, though?
And even though she was very disoriented and seemed kind of out of it, the medical staff allowed the police to come in right away and start asking questions because they knew time was of the essence with Rachel. They had to find her. And so the officers came into Caroline's room and they sat down, and the first
Where'd the boyfriend live? Did he say where because didn't she meet the boyfriend after she started going to that school? Which would mean that he would live. What if there is no secret job and it's the boyfriend? What if the boyfriend and Carolyn, anyway, let me, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting wild. I'm starting to go crazy. Hold on.
First question they asked her was, do you know where Rachel Barber is? And Caroline just stood there kind of stunned for a second and then just said, yes. Over the next few months, as Caroline's memory came back into focus, she would piece together one of the most unbelievable stories that police in Melbourne had ever heard. The following is a reconstruction of that story based both on Caroline's testimony and on what police were able to actually fact check. Back on Sunday, February 28th, 1999, so the day before Rachel vanished, Caroline called Rachel and offered her a job. Caroline told Rachel that she was working on this psychology study and she needed participants. However, the study was highly confidential, so if Rachel did want to be a part of it, she wouldn't be able to tell anyone what she was doing. However, the study was quite lucrative for Rachel, and it really didn't require much of Rachel. All Rachel had to do was meet Caroline the following day after school was over at the Richmond train station, and then the two of them would ride the train to Prahran. They would get off, make their way to Caroline's apartment, and there they would conduct this psychological study, and when it was over, Caroline would pay Rachel $100 and the cost of transportation. And so Rachel, she was thrilled at the idea because she wanted those beautiful blue shoes, and so she said yes. So the next day, Monday, March 1st, Rachel wrapped up school. She made her way to the Richmond train station. She connected with Caroline. They hopped on board the train. They made their way to Prahran with Allison spotting them on the train as they went. And then when they got off the train at Prahran, Caroline and Rachel would make their way to a nearby pizza shop and get a pizza and some beer. And then they would walk the rest of the way to Caroline's apartment. Once they were inside the apartment, Caroline led them upstairs to her bedroom. And then they both sat down on the floor at the foot of the bed and began eating their pizza and having some beer and just laughing and exchanging some stories. And then after their dinner was over, Caroline told Rachel it was time to start the study, and it began with a guided meditation. Sitting next to Rachel, Caroline told her to stay calm, think happy thoughts, close your eyes, and just begin to breathe in nice and slow, breathe out nice and slow, and just feel
exactly. We gonna do this. We gonna do this psychological study. Let's drink some beer, then we gonna meditate. Boy, my God. You see, I'm trying to stay out the chat room. I'm trying to stay out there so bad. Hold on, here we go. This is wild. Oh, let's go.
Self-breathing in and out. And so Rachel did as she was told and began breathing in and out and being very calm. And Caroline, at this point, she stood up and began kind of pacing around the room, watching Rachel periodically and reminding her to think happy thoughts and stay calm and keep just listening to herself breathe in and breathe out. And then at some point, Caroline just stopped and stood right in front of Rachel and just stared at her really intently. And at some point, Caroline was confident that the drugs she had laced in the pizza that she had given Rachel were starting to take an effect.
Shit! What the hell? How did he just slip that in there like that? Balin, you just didn't slip that in there like that, did you?
Breathe in and breathe out. And then at some point, Caroline just stopped and stood right in front of Rachel and just stared at her really intently. And at some point, Caroline was confident that the drugs she had laced in the pizza that she had given Rachel were starting to take an effect. It looked like Rachel was starting to doze off. And so at that point, Caroline walked around behind Rachel, who still had her eyes closed. She's still doing the study, and Caroline pulled out a telephone cord. She wrapped it around Rachel's neck, and she pulled it as tight as she could. Immediately, Rachel came out of her trance, and she reached up and began trying to pull the cord off of her neck. But Caroline was easily 50 pounds heavier than Rachel, and easily was able to maintain control over Rachel. And so Rachel is squirming and fighting and scratching.
Yeah, but the person who was found on the ground was Caroline.
Scratching and doing everything she can to try to get this cord off, but she can't. And eventually the fight just leaves her body and she goes still. Caroline would maintain tension on that cord to ensure Rachel was dead, but then eventually she would release the tension on the cord, at which point she would drag Rachel's body into a nearby closet and she would shut the door. 2 days later, Caroline would open that closet up and she would drag Rachel's body back out of the closet with the cord still wrapped around her neck. And she would roll Rachel's body up in a carpet and then stuff her inside of a large army duffel bag that Caroline had purchased for this exact reason, for disposing Rachel's body. And then she called a taxi who came to her apartment and she lugged Rachel's body still inside of this bag and dumped it in the taxi. And then she and Rachel's body and the taxi driver drove about an hour north to rural Kilmore, where Caroline's father had a vacation home. And there she would bury Rachel's body in a shallow grave next to one of her childhood pets. When Caroline had been rushed to the hospital because she was found unconscious in her bedroom by police, the assumption was she and probably Rachel had been attacked, and that was why Caroline was unconscious. But what really happened is Caroline was in her apartment and she saw the police show up, and it made her so stressed that it triggered a seizure, and that was
what. This is one of the wildest. I'm sorry, this is one of the wildest ones.
Why she passed out in her bedroom. When she came to in the hospital and people began asking her what happened, she would say that Rachel's death was an accident. However, months later, after investigators had gone through all of the evidence they had collected from Caroline's apartment, they discovered Rachel's death was anything but accidental. According to the notebooks they found all over Caroline's apartment, which were basically Caroline's journals, Caroline hated herself. She totally loathed her physical image and who she was.
I told you. Damn. I'm telling you right now, I can't stand this type of stuff. She was jealous because that's why he mentioned how she was bigger and she was and she looked plain. Remember that? As opposed to Rachel, who was pretty and a dancer and talented. And it was people were drawn to her. And so this lady, she's 20, she's an adult. She's been harboring all of this resentment and hatred towards Rachel. And she feels bad about how she looks and all this stuff. So what did she do? She ended up murdering Rachel. This is crazy. Is this real folk? These are real folk. Look at this. This is supposed to be a 20-year-old. Hate school, hate teachers, hate snobby people, hate school work, hate house music, hate keyboard, no life. I hate myself. No life, ugly, fat, chubby cheeks, disgusting. Wow. Big nose, headaches, hate handwriting, hate reports.
She was obsessed with the girl she used to babysit, Rachel Barber. Rachel was this beautiful, perfect person that Caroline wished she could be. And so one day, Caroline decided she would just stop being Caroline and would literally become Rachel. And to do that, she would kill Rachel and assume her identity. The secret job, the psychology study that Caroline offered Rachel, was a very intentional trap. She knew Rachel wanted money for things like those blue shoes, and she knew Rachel would trust Caroline. Caroline was her babysitter, and so Rachel would have no problem going into Caroline's apartment alone at night to get the money. Caroline planned to murder Rachel and stage it so it looked like Rachel had run away, and then afterwards, Caroline planned to lose 45 pounds and then get a nose job so she would look more like Rachel. And then to complete her transformation, Caroline would legally change her name to Rachel Barber. In November of 2000, Caroline Robertson pleaded guilty to murdering Rachel Barber and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. In January of 2015, Caroline was released after only serving 15 of those 20 years. In the years after Rachel's death, Rachel's mother, Elizabeth, would write a book about the experience called The Perfect Victim, which would later be adapted into a major movie that starred some of Australia's biggest actors and actresses. On Wednesday, March 24th, 1999, Rachel Barber's body was once again lowered into the ground, except this time she was surrounded by friends and family and people who loved her. Over 850 people attended Rachel's funeral. They brought letters and poems and toys, which were all buried with Rachel, as were the blue shoes that Rachel so wanted that she planned to buy with the $100 Caroline had promised her. So that's going to do it. If you got something...
All right, this is a tough one. This was a tough one right here. I can't say that I figured it out, but I had an idea, and it just where it went to in the end, because he's told so many stories of teenage girls who have these issues with other girls who are pretty and attractive or popular, and then they set them up for these scenarios and end up hurting or harming or worse, in this case, murdering. There's two things I just want to point out, because I always like to have some sort of a lesson here. Number one, the boyfriend. If your girlfriend tells you that she's doing a secret job, your job as her boyfriend is to make sure that she's safe. And if that means figuring out what that secret job is, or discouraging her from doing that secret job, or contacting her parents. She's 15 years old. Contacting her parents and saying, hey, listen, me and your daughter, I care about your daughter. When we were dating, I just want you to know that she told me that she's doing a secret job, and I'm a little concerned about that. That's the right thing to do. Number one, as a young man, you're showing care and concern. You're also transmitting potentially life-saving information to the parents so that they can decide what they need to do, if anything. Because let's say if they do it and they look into it and she's, I don't know, she picks up a job, picking up trash at the school after school, and she gets paid a little bit of money. Okay, you see. But as her boyfriend, that would have been the right thing to do, is to transmit that information, find out what was going on. I would have just transmitted information directly to the parents, and then work with the parents to get the 411 on what was happening. The other thing too, I just have to say here is it sounded like to me that this school was a ways away from her home, and that's why she had to catch the train. That's significant to me too, because if you're picking her up at 6:15 p.m., I would like to think that the school, what does it close at 6 p.m.? Probably not. 5, probably not. 4, maybe. 3, probably in around there. See, I'm speculating here, but let's just say 4 o'clock. Okay, well, from the time she gets from the school, she gets to the bus, it takes her a certain amount of time to get to the location. The meetup location was 6:15 by that time. As a parent, I just wouldn't, for a 15-year-old girl, I don't care where, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for a 15-year-old. I wouldn't do it for a 16-year-old. I probably wouldn't do it for a 17-year-old. And if it was that important for her to be at that school, and I'm not blaming the parents for what happened, I'm just saying that the scenario, how it's set up, I would have, if she had to go to that school, then we would have, the only way she would have been able to go there is if I'm picking her up after school to bring her back home, or her mother's picking her up after school to bring her back home, and I'm dropping her off, or her mother's dropping her off. Okay, that would have been my approach, because the likelihood of something happening when a child is away in this type of scenario at the age of 15 is heightened if there's an extended period of time where you don't really know what she's doing and who she's with, even if it's a babysitter. See? Those are my thoughts on this. So anybody have any thoughts on this one before I close out? This was a tough one. It really was. I mean, it was all over the place. I can't say that I figured it out, but I had a sense that how he was framing this, how he was talking about how she was attractive and she was talented and people were drawn to her. And what came to mind early on, I said it sounded like is this a situation where one of her friends or a group of her friends were jealous? And that's what it sounded like, and that's what it ended up being. Yeah, so grateful for my my wife and I, we're hyper vigilant. We've always been like that. Boy, I tell you, we've always been like that, maybe even too much. Even with our sons, but more specifically with our daughters. And I even told my daughter, I said, listen, you're pretty. These girls, they're gonna be jealous. You got beautiful hair. I said, listen, we ain't playing no games. We ain't playing no games. All right. It's a different world out here. And I know this is 1999, but someone said it before. They said children can be so mean. They can be so mean, and you don't have to. Your child ain't doing nothing, ain't messing with nobody, but they're looking for trouble. Okay. Yeah, if y'all can hit the like button, I appreciate it. Not in 98 or 22. What? Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's just from my perspective. Now, again, they may live where they live at. It may be real safe or whatever. But even still, I wouldn't chance it. I just would not. Not at 15. And if the girl's pretty, she's 15. No, it's not gonna happen. We got a new member too. Thanks, Angelic, for becoming a new member. I appreciate it. We usually do, well, we've been doing way more than what I said we were going to do. I said I'm going to do these short videos. We've been live streaming and we be in there for an hour. We got an ongoing series dealing with Zaza Ali that we'll finish up for sure this weekend. And then there's other stuff we'll be getting into, but there's plenty of content for members already. So if you guys aren't a member, please join. I've been mainly focusing on member content and the numbers continue to grow. So that's where my focus has been. Thank you again for becoming a member. Welcome. Serena says, happy early birthday. We share the same. Oh, well, happy birthday. So tomorrow, my family, at least most of them, my other son, he got to go to work, but we're going to I'll take the family out to go get something to eat. And then later, it'll be late though. It'll be probably later than right now. When we get back, I'll go ahead and set something up and we'll get together. I'll have some ice cream, whatever. We'll just chit chat for 20, 30 minutes or something like that. Just hang out and celebrate my birthday. Okay, so if you come tomorrow, I'll wish you a happy birthday and I'll sing you happy birthday too. Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for the super chat too. I appreciate it. The victim of naivety, yeah, I know. A victim, yeah, I thought about that too. You know, it's not like she did anything wrong. She wanted those shoes, you know, and the other girl, you can tell she was very calculating. She was like, okay, I know she's gonna trust me. I'm gonna offer a certain amount of money. I know she wants these shoes. It's a quick thing, and they go get pizza and beer, and then, see, that's another thing. Somebody offer you some food or some drink these days. Even then, you just can't do it. This one is really sad. Jealousy is so real, and hateful people do hate. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, and it's not just because a person is pretty. People can be jealous about all kind of crazy shit and just do things. Even online, there's people jealous because I don't get it. I really don't get it. Just hateful. See? Yeah, blue shoes. Yeah. I know this was a tough one. It really was. How's it going, information man? Thanks for tuning on in. Let me see. Let me scroll down here. I was scared from the moment we started. Yeah, it was difficult because he really framed this in a way to where it was kind of confusing, but we already knew that something bad was going to happen. Okay, the killer's parents should have also been more aware. Yeah, you're right about this. I thought about this too while we were. In fact, when they mentioned Rachel being sad, I figured and how she's afraid of the dark and all these different types of things. There's some sort of issue that took place. Even that when she said probably some anxiety that led to depression. That's what I thought. And they wanted to do what they felt was best for her. And so they put her inside of this dance school. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But the idea is if she's already having some of these issues, well, you need to, you know, even if it's an hour, 2 hour gap between her being at school and her getting home, you got to be able to account for that. You know, and if that means you got to go pick her up and if you got to rework your schedule, whatever you have to do, you do it. I would not have a girl who's 15. And obviously she's dealing with some issues. It was clear to me that he didn't go into that, but I could tell by how he was phrasing that. The best thing to do is no, we'll make sure we'll drop you off and we'll pick you up so we can count for every single moment. And we want to make sure that you're safe and make sure that you're in a good psychological state. Now, on the flip side, this other Carolyn, who's an adult, 20, it's obvious that she was struggling with some things. You see, did she get obviously she didn't get the type of psychological services that she needs. That's very obvious. Now she's 20. At that time she was 20 and she ends up doing what she did. Okay, that's a mental health issue. So you're right about that, Renee. I thought about that. Pretty girls and women are just successful in some way can put them in potential harm because of jealousy. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. Shaquille Robinson just died from a woman she was on vacation with. I don't know about that. I've seen things come up, you know, like on YouTube about that, but I haven't investigated that at all. Better safe than sorry. People are venomous, especially so-called. Yeah. And Mr. Ballen has told many stories where it's just the friends. You know, they get jealous, and it tends to be girls. You know, yeah. Yeah, I'll look into it. I just haven't had time. I mean, I wanted to live stream more this week, but I just been so busy with stuff. I've been trying to sleep too. Me and my wife have been staying up late watching different shows. We watched this one show real quick, and then we're going to be done. We watched this one show called, and I can't think of what it's called. It's a Western, and they got a Native American character. They got Native Americans in it, but the main character is Native American. The other person is from London. She's the lady that played the most recent Mary Poppins. I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember. Was it? I think it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix or Amazon. Anyway, that we've been watching that and staying up late. And so I've been going to bed late and got to get up and get the kids to school. Then I come home and lay back down, and I wake up at like 2. So, all right. Anyway, it's a series. You guys, y'all might want to check it out. Okay. You have to go. I'm on vacation. I don't gotta go back until Wednesday, so I'm all good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Shaquila's story is so sad. Okay, I haven't looked into it at all. They actually buried her with those shoes. Not sure how I feel. Yeah, I know, but I get it. It was more like she really wanted those shoes. It's a sad thing. Let's see. Let me scroll down here. I'm trying to see if there's anyone who had a comment on this particular video. I'm scared. Yeah, see, I'm scared to even research what y'all are. Yeah, I've seen it come up. I just haven't looked into it. Yeah. Okay. So the movie is called it's not a movie. It's a series. It's called The English. Okay. You guys might want to check it out. Yeah. Emily Blunt. That's her name. Yeah. Yeah. I had a crush on her a long time ago when she was in this movie with Tom Cruise, and it's a sci-fi movie. And they go back in time, okay? They keep going back. They keep repeating things over and over again. And there's this one part in the movie where she's fighting, training or whatever, and she's on the ground on her stomach, and then she slithers up like this. Ever since that, no, I'm just playing. Ever since that scene, I can't, whenever I see Emily Blunt, I want to hit her blunt. I'm just playing. Cases like this remind me of the movie. Yeah, I know it does. Huh? This just crazy people, just real crazy people. And then, and thanks, Tata. Mr. Thesis says not much, but a little change for dinner. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I was just playing too. I was just playing about Emily Blunt, y'all. Don't. Sometimes I'd say stuff and I shouldn't say it. All right, thanks, Tata. Thanks, Mr. Thesis. I'll be back tomorrow for sure to do a live stream. We'll do a little birthday celebration. And we'll hang out for a little while. Yeah, I was just playing. I watched that with you. So how you going? I know. I'm just playing. I did have a crush on Mary Poppins, though. I ain't gonna lie about that. When I was a kid, when she came down on that umbrella, I said, "Oh Lord Jesus!" I said, "That's a fine mamma jamma." I said, "That's a fine mamma jamma," but that was that was a long time ago. Okay, that lady didn't age well either. The original Mary Poppins. Anyway, let me stop. Did you listen to Mr. Ballen's podcast on Amazon Music? Brand new? No, I don't. I could, but I just haven't had time. I have not had time. I used to watch him or listen to him when he had him out for everybody, but he's big time now. They got him on Amazon. I said, okay, he's doing his thing. I'm happy for him. I remember he when I first heard of him, he was doing good, but he wasn't blowed up like now. He done got blowed up. Okay, I'm so happy for that guy. Happy birthday to you and Serena. Is it Serena Williams' birthday? I didn't know that. All right, that's why I'm so athletic. I always wonder why I'm so athletic and I can do the crip walk real good. You know, that's what happened. I know how to do that crip walk. I'm just playing. Malika says Lennon gonna be sleeping on that couch. I know. I'll be up all there. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant Serena Williams. You talking about Serena Santiago? My bad. No, I'm serious. Do I need to pull up a picture? Shoot, I got time. I'm on vacation. I was going to live stream and do some retro gaming. I was going to play Super Mario Brothers and hang out and talk trash. Mary Poppins original actress. Don't look at the new pictures though, because her name was Julie Andrews. Okay, she came down on that umbrella. I was a kid at the time. I said, "Oh Lord." They just got old pictures of her on here now. I don't see none of the younger ones. That's okay. I ain't gonna show no pictures then, because then y'all think I'm crazy. Was that her? Yeah, here she is with the bird. This is her right here with the bird. You know what? She wasn't even cute. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at it now. Something was wrong with me. Something was wrong with me, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm looking at her. No, she's talking to that fake bird right here. Let me pull it up right here. It won't let me do it for some reason. Oh, here it is right here. Let me go ahead and show it to y'all real quick. Y'all let me know. Okay, maybe I was tripping when I was a kid. There we go. Come on now, Cheryl Second Board. Come on now, bro. If you saw a queen like this, be honest now. Be honest, Cheryl Second Board. If you saw a queen like this holding that bird, you know doggone well. Come on. All right. Y'all don't think she? I know. I'm looking at it now. I'm like, damn. I was a weirdo kid when I got blowed off, Brian. I know. Okay. I know. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. All right. Thank y'all so much for tuning on in. I'm about to go watch me some Mary Poppins, the original. No, I ain't disrespecting her. I'm just saying that she didn't age all that well. That's all. That's my bad. I'm sorry. Yeah, she was in The Sound of Music too, but she wasn't cute to me. I thought she was cute in Mary Poppins, but now when I look at her, I'm like, yeah. Yeah, she did. You think she did? Okay. Yeah, she said the spoonful of sugar. I said, oh, I said, oh, I said, oh. I said, really? I said, all right. I said, tippy toppy. Now I gotta walk it back now. I look at it now. Yeah. That was my jam. 103 days. Stop playing. Stop playing. Lady, we done did this so many times. It's no point now. There's no point of even bringing that up, because we done said, oh yeah, it's going to 50 days to go, 10 days to go. All right. Yeah, something was wrong. I apologize. Let me do a transcript. She ain't playing about Julie Andrews. She said, that's not, nobody talk nothing bad about her. All right. I did have a crush when I was a child, though. All right. Okay, let's finish on up. Otherwise, we're going to be up here acting the fool. She all right. All right. Yeah, I remember Sound of Music. Yeah. Okay. Stop it, Tata. Don't do that. That's right. I'll give you 2 spoons, King. She said, King. All right. She's a queen and a princess. Oh, I don't know that. Y'all don't know nothing about that. I don't even know what that is. A Princess Diaries. All right. Okay. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much for tuning on in. I'll be back tomorrow with another live stream. We'll do a little birthday celebration for 10, 20 minutes or so and hang out. We got more live streams coming up over the weekend. I hope you enjoyed tonight's live stream. Please hit the like button. And thanks everyone too who sent in super chats. I appreciate all. I know I said my thing was this. All right. I'll talk to y'all soon. Take care. Peace.